Okay, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here in person once again to wish IFPRI a happy birthday. I'm going to be talking about Africa, and in the area of food production and food supplies, Africa has had a somewhat divergent experience from other developing country regions. When you think back 40 years to when IFPRI was created, anxieties about food production in Africa were not very acute. Africa then had only 1/3 as many people as it has today. There was a great deal of unused land, and average crop yields in Africa in 1975 were actually 30% higher than they were in South Asia, which was the major focus of concern. But then in the ensuing decades, a new pattern emerged. Population, of course, increased in Africa. That was a good thing. It was a result of reduced infant mortality. Crop yields per hectare increased in Asia, increased in Latin America, but they scarcely increased at all in Africa. I didn't bring any PowerPoint slides, but Africa's divergence here is so dramatic I can draw a picture with my hands. This is 1975. This is 2015. This is yield growth in crops in Asia. This is yield growth in Latin America. This is yield growth in Africa. Take one example, Tanzania. In Tanzania, in 1975, maize yields were 1.2 tons per hectare. 2 years ago, they were 1.3 tons per hectare, essentially no increase. So Tanzania, to feed its rapidly growing population, actually had to quadruple the area that it planted to maize, which is environmentally destructive and not sustainable. And worst of all, this strategy does not produce enough food. If you look at FAO's per capita index of food production, in East Africa today, it's 9% lower than it was in 1975 when IFPRI was created. In Central Africa, it's 15% lower than it was in 1975. What's the cause of this agricultural stagnation? It's not conflict and geography. Look at Tanzania. It's not a landlocked country, and it's never had a civil war. I don't blame Africa's farmers. I actually blame, first of all, government leaders in Africa that have failed to invest adequately in any kind of agricultural development. India, during the Green Revolution, devoted 22% of its public budget to agricultural development. Most African governments, for the last 3 decades, have devoted only 5% or less of their public budget to agriculture. So you can't turn loose productivity without large investments in roads, in irrigation, in fertilizer, in rural electricity, in research. Schengen said earlier that investment was one of his favorite topics. I hope that IFPRI in the years ahead will look a little more carefully, invest a little more research time in understanding why African governments have failed to measure up to their own pledges to increase more in agriculture.